Now, we've all heard pledges to plant trees to tackle climate change and save the planet. But is it the real deal or just a bit of PR spin? In Scotland, there's a growing trend with businesses buying up land, then planting trees and using other methods to reduce their carbon footprint. And it's been dubbed green Lairding.
But there are questions around accountability and what it will mean to communities living on the land. The Nine's reporter Isla Todd has been exploring the issue.
Green Lairding, the term coined for landowners using their property for eco-purposes, like tree planting. And there's a growing trend of businesses doing just that. But is this companies taking responsibility for their part in climate change, or just a marketing tool to big up their green status?
There is a risk there, and I think we have a shared interest in Scotland in making sure that this doesn't become greenwashing. And actually, it's pretty clear that companies should only be offsetting the carbon that really remains after having reduced and taken out all the carbon from their system that they can do otherwise.
There are a fair few examples of businesses buying land to plant trees. Here in Scotland, a prominent one is Brewdog, who've bought the Cairngorms estate in the Cairngorms with the promise of tree planting from 2023.
Reduction is our absolute number one priority, and what we focus on. And in the last year, we've reduced our emissions by 34%. Secondly to that, what we can't reduce, we look to remove through high quality carbon offsets and through nature-based projects like the Lost Forest.
And it's here in the Cairngorms where Brewdog will be planting trees as well as restoring peatland to absorb carbon from the atmosphere, because it takes decades for trees to mature.
It's a bit like human beings. They grow slowly, they start small, and then they get bigger, and you reach your sort of optimum age in your 20s, and then you become an older, maturer person or an older, maturer tree, and you start to sequester less carbon over time, but because it accumulates in terms of the ring tree growth, you're sequestering large amounts of carbon over time.
But Brewdog already claimed to be carbon negative, so is the Lost Forest project really necessary? They say yes to further protect the planet. Either way, it's good for business, and there is business to be had. Real Wild Estates is a newly formed company that launched a few months ago. Its purpose helps people and businesses buy land and eco-manage it, with the promise that it's a sound investment.
We basically work to restore peatlands to a carbon negative state, and that is something that can be demonstrated and tested with full oversight here in the UK. By not working outside of the UK, and of course by not owning any land, we are not an industrial company, we are not a production company, we are not depleting resources anywhere in the world, and therefore using these projects to make ourselves look good. But we do concede that greenwash is a risk, and our way of dealing with that is making sure that our carbon negative projects are completely transparent and can be audited here in the UK.
Real Wild Estates say they've turned business away because clients had wanted the climate-friendly status without putting in the work. But regardless of intent, the consequences of green Lairding could see the cost of land soar and communities priced out.
Scotland has a history of land that is dominated by external capital buying land for its own advantage. And our land should really be owned and managed and used by local people, by local businesses who live here in the local economy. That is the priority for our land, and we shouldn't really be flogging our land to global capital.
So is it greenwashing, or is green Lairding here to stay? Most likely a mix of both, but there are calls for legislation to protect those living on or near such estates.
Yeah, these are kind of rapidly developing markets at the moment, so I think government will need to put policy framework around that. Some of that will include regulation, but I would also make the point there's actually a lot that can be done now through good practice. We're putting together at the moment some principles around good practice to make sure that if you are buying into the land market for this purpose, actually you do engage communities properly in some of the decisions.
The Scottish Government has set the target for 2045 to reach net zero emissions for greenhouse gases, and businesses have their own part to play in reaching that. The use of land like this one and managing it to offset the carbon footprint is just one way of achieving that, and as you've heard, it's growing in popularity, even if not everybody agrees with the technique. Isla Todd, BBC News, the Cairngorms estate.